All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a massive shift in military tech and geopolitics. We are looking at a brand new piece of hardware today, but honestly, what's way more important here is how this hardware is fundamentally flipping the script on how nations actually think about warfare. It brings up this fascinating and, frankly terrifying paradox. How exactly do nuclear powers fight conventional wars without, accidentally triggering the end of the world? Think about it. When two nuclear-armed neighbors clash, every single missile fired carries this huge risk of being misinterpreted as a nuclear launch. But as we'll see, high-tech conventional weapons are completely changing the rules of engagement here. Section 1, the modern artillery race. To really understand this new hardware, we first got to look at the absolute pressure cooker of South Asian border tensions that created it. And that pressure is perfectly captured by a highly compressed timeline from May 2025, Operation Sindoor. This was an intense, short, incredibly sharp regional conflict between India and Pakistan, and it lasted exactly 88 hours. That's it. In modern multi-domain warfare, conflicts just don't drag on for months before escalating anymore. They unfold in literally hours. And those 88 hours, they were enough to expose a massive, critical vulnerability in how both sides actually fight. Because during those 88 hours, both sides realized the extreme danger of nuclear entanglement. They basically realized they needed a way to fight hard and strike deep without accidentally tripping that nuclear wire. And this shared realization instantly sparked a rapid race for dedicated, hyper-precise conventional rocket forces that are strictly separated from their nuclear command structures. Okay, so Section 2, Anatomy of the Suryastra. Let's dive right into the specific hardware India procured to close the strategic gap. The sheer urgency here is perfectly captured by this number, 293 crore rupees. That was the cost of an emergency contract. Driven by those lessons from Operation Sindoor, the Indian Army used fast-track rules to bring the Suryastra from a mere concept to frontline deployment in record time. They completely bypassed the usual procurement cycles that usually drag on for years and years. So what did they actually buy? Well, the Suryastra is this incredible mix of local manufacturing and foreign tech. The structure itself is built indigenously by India's NIBE Limited, but it uses the highly advanced pulse technology, that's precise and universal launching system, from Israel's Elbit Systems. And the whole thing is mounted on this rugged 6x6 Tatra truck. This beast can hit speeds of 100 kilometers per hour. It's got a 500-kilometer operational range, which means it can traverse challenging deserts and high-altitude borders with total ease. But check this out, because this brilliantly illustrates the system's core superpower, its multi-caliber versatility. Instead of being locked into just one type of ammo, this launcher uses interchangeable modular pods. So a field commander can instantly swap from an 18-rocket pod for short-range infantry support right over to the Predator Hawk for a 300-kilometer deep strike. It can even launch Sky Striker loitering munitions. These are basically kamikaze drones that scout ahead and strike dynamic targets on the fly. It's like a giant, deadly multi-tool. Moving on to Section 3, Precision over Pure Power. Because, let's be honest, range means absolutely nothing if you can't actually hit your target. To really understand why Suryastra is different, we have to talk about CEP. That stands for Circular Error Probable. Basically, this is the military standard for accuracy. It's just the radius of a circle around your target where half of your fired munitions are guaranteed to land. So the lower that CEP number, the more precise the strike. Simple enough, right? Now, put that into perspective. Traditional multi-barrel rocket launchers, they have a CEP of around 75 meters. They're basically designed to just saturate a huge, broad area, but the Suryastra is a completely different beast. At the May 2026 Chandapur live fire tests, the 300-kilometer Predator Hawk hit a CEP of just 2.0 meters, and the 150-kilometer Extra hit 1.5 meters. Guided by GPS and inertial navigation systems, it literally turns a blunt bombardment tool into a surgical sniper rifle. But here's the catch. All that extreme precision doesn't mean a thing if the launcher just gets blown up. To survive on a modern, sensor-heavy battlefield, the Suryastra relies on this highly dynamic shoot and scoot sequence. The crew can roll up to an unsurveyed location, set the whole thing up in under 3 minutes, receive their digital fire orders, launch the guided rounds, and entirely pack up and relocate before the enemy's counter-battery radar can even calculate where the shots came from. It's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse that keeps the crew alive. All right, Section 4, Lessons from Operation Sindoor. Let's zoom out from the machine itself and neutrally analyze the battlefield that catalyzed all of this. So, going back to Operation Sindoor, it escalated incredibly fast. On May 7th, 2025, the conflict ticked off with standoff strikes. Literally the next day, May 8th, both sides were heavily engaged. We're talking drones, air defenses, and conventional missile strikes targeting vital military infrastructure. And then, May 10th, a deliberate halt is called after just 88 hours. The sheer speed of this just undeniably proved that the older doctrines simply couldn't keep up with modern realities. And the absolute core issue here was the constraint both sides faced. For instance, when India utilized its conventional BrahMos missiles, Pakistan actually had the capability to respond with its Babur cruise missiles, but they held them back. Why? Well, because the Babur is a dual-capable system, controlled by Pakistan's nuclear custodian. Preparing to launch it could have been misread by the rest of the world as a nuclear launch. So having these dual-capable systems literally paralyzes your conventional military options. Which leads us to Section 5, countering the Fatah eye. Because of that exact paralysis, both India and Pakistan realized they desperately needed non-nuclear, dedicated rocket forces. Now, what's really interesting here is how these two nations took completely different approaches to the exact same geopolitical problem. Pakistan developed the Fatah, and they put their focus on a massive 400-kilometer extended range for strategic standoff strikes. India's Suryastra, as we saw, prioritizes extreme sub-2-meter precision, multi-caliber modularity, and drone integration. But the big takeaway is that both nations are deliberately building powerful conventional deterrents designed to stay safely below that nuclear threshold. And frankly, this is part of a much broader regional shift. You've got China deploying the PHL-16 system with a 500-kilometer range. Pakistan has established an entirely dedicated Army Rocket Force command, kept totally separate from its nuclear command. And India is rapidly raising its own dedicated rocket missile force. On top of that, these systems are just incredibly economical. They can deliver precision strikes for a fraction of the cost of a multi-million-dollar supersonic cruise missile, which means militaries can actually sustain high-volume operations. All right, final section, Section 6, the paradox of limited war. Let's pull all the way back to the macro level, because all of this engineering and maneuvering builds up to a super important strategic takeaway. Building these dedicated, highly precise conventional weapons like the Suryastra or the Fatah-2, it definitely solves the immediate problem of nuclear entanglement. It allows nations to fight hard, fast, and surgically. It makes limited wars highly operational and, theoretically at least, highly controllable. A military can effectively neutralize a radar installation 300 kilometers away without the risk of an accidental nuclear holocaust. But there's a catch, and it's a chilling paradox that defense analysts are grappling with right now. I want to read this quote to you. The more usable conventional options become under the nuclear shadow, the more likely they are to be used, and the harder it becomes to prevent escalation. Think about that. If you go out and create a perfectly safe, perfectly reliable weapon for a limited war, you kind of entirely remove the terrifying constraints that prevent those wars from starting in the first place. So that leaves us with the ultimate question. By untangling conventional strikes from nuclear tripwires, are we actually making the world safer, or are we just lowering the barrier to entry for the next conflict? Does building better weapons to control limited wars actually make them more likely to happen? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. It's a complex, rapidly evolving situation, and I'll leave you to ponder the fragile future of modern deterrence. See you next time.